Well, I haven't had a controversial video in quite a while. So let's review Death Stranding. Now, I'm going to do my best not to spoil anything major. There will be a few things that I talk about here, but I'm not going to break into any serious, plot details or spoilers that take place later on in the game. Nothing like that. I have one clip, but it's out of context, and I don't think it's really going to affect the story for you at all. I really wanted to talk about Death Stranding because I did finish it up yesterday. Took me, it said, because at the end it'll tell you, it took just over 39 hours. It was like 39 hours and 20 minutes to finish Death Stranding. And after I was done, I kind of sat there looking at the screen when they give you your rank and everything, and I thought to myself, I said, Death Stranding could have been great. Because to me, Death Stranding right now is just good. It's not great. It's just good. But it could have been great. That's the part that's the most frustrating here. Not necessarily some of the gameplay elements and other things. It's the fact that I look back on this game and just some of the design decisions and a few things that they did in this game really hold it back to me. And I kind of wanted to talk about that here. So, no, I don't think this is like some people are on either end of the spectrum. Either it's an amazing game or it's a terrible game. I'm actually kind of in the middle on it. Like I said, I think it's good. I don't think it's terrible, and I don't think it's amazing. It's just kind of eh. So I mostly wanted to go over some pros and cons, and I think I have almost an even amount of both, and I can tell you a bit about this game and kind of why I've come to this conclusion. Now, of course, when the game released, it came out to a ton of controversy because a week before that, we had the review embargo lift, and some reviewers didn't even want to finish the game in time for the embargo. We had Edge say that they just couldn't bring themselves to finish it because that's one thing they apparently were all asked was, if you're going to review this game, at least finish it first, because there are some things that happen in the back half of the game that pick up and things change and a lot of stuff happens in the plot. And to be honest, I mean, this game heavily relies on its story to actually be worth much. Just to be honest, that's the way it is. I mean, it's a Kojima game. A lot of his games, for the most part, rely on a plot that is interesting and gripping and pull you through the game. So yes, you kind of had to finish the game before you can really talk in depth about it. So let's start with one of the biggest pros here, and that is the story. Kojima has set, I think at this point, a high mark, like a massive high mark for how you tell a story and do a full narration in a video game. It is impressive stuff. The character models look insanely good. I mean, it's later on, as you get through the game, they start to pick up with more and more scenes, and everything's a bit more clear, and they're trying to kind of flesh everything out for you as you get towards the end. Wow, some of these scenes, I'm telling you, it is something else. I'm showing you stuff from the trailers, just so I'm not showing you anything from the actual end of the game, but they showed a lot of some of the stuff in the trailers. You can see from what they were showing us before, you can recognize the characters, the actors that played, and of course Kojima got a lot of actors together for this. I mean, Norman Reedus is the main character, but he got a lot of people together. I know he did some techniques where he took full-on pictures of them and kind of brought them in, and it really shows how much detail there really is in these scenes and how they're choreographed, and everything looks really, really well done, brought together. And it's even just outside of the cutscenes, because there are times where it's a cutscene, but it's not. It's like a scripted event kind of happening, but it doesn't necessarily feel like a scripted event completely like we're used to. It's hard to describe without just outright ruining it. But there are times where I wasn't even aware that I was in a scripted event, and they were just trying to convey and tell the story at that time. It's really impressive work by Kojima. And I mean, considering he made this game in, I think what, 3 years while creating a studio, and he had this entire lore and world and backstory and this whole thing built up. It's impressive stuff. I mean, it's nothing. It is some crazy stuff going on in this game, right? There are parts of, things of supernatural elements in here, and it is an interesting how he kind of blends what is more like archaic, where they're actually hand delivering packages, with some of the craziest stuff where people can teleport around, and you have BTs, we'll say, in there, and you're detecting them, and it's got some horror elements. It's amazing how he brought all of this together with what feels like a ton of backstory. There's just a lot of stuff you can read about this game. They have a bunch of events that took place to get to the point in the game. I'm being very vague, yes, but everything around this game, I think, hinges on the story being good, and Kojima pulled it off. There were some parts in the game where it took me out a little bit, okay? And I almost feel like it was, things had to be done because it was still a video game, because they're coming up with some crazy intricate ways to solve problems rather than the most simple thing ever. Like, for example, in the game, something called time fall exists, and this bugged me, and I even tweeted about it. Time fall exists. It's basically rain that makes you age rapidly. It has that effect on humans, but it also has that effect on your cargo that you're carrying, and what they have invented were raincoats that you wear that pretty much just deflects it. It has no effect on you at that point. It even has a hood that automatically goes up, which is kind of neat. Whenever it detects rain, timefall dropping, it goes up, and then you're not affected by it because you're covered in a raincoat. However, your cargo is just out. Now they invented literal spray cans that fix it. You spray your cargo and it's good. They also have these timefall shelters that will basically heal your cargo essentially and make sure it's not destroyed, because it will get destroyed in timefall if you stand out there too long. But immediately when I was going to be making a delivery and they were talking about timefall and I had a raincoat, I thought, well, why don't we just tie a raincoat to this? Just cover it in a raincoat or tarp. What? I don't understand. Why aren't we just doing that? And the whole time they're like, oh, if only there was a way. If only there was a way to get around this timefall. Make sure your raincoat's on you, by the way, so you don't get affected by the timefall, but only if there was a way to make sure the cargo wasn't affected by this timefall. It was just the most obvious thing, and there are other points in the game like that too, but they do kind of get in the plot elements, but it's almost like they missed that. I don't get how they missed that. I mean, we even wrap our appliances in moving blankets when we just move because we don't want to get them scratched. They couldn't think to they could have just tied a loop on it and thrown it on top and probably saved quite a bit of cargo that way. But again, video game, it's a plot that needs to work. Eventually, apparently, when you 5-star one of the locations, you get a tarp that also degrades anyway, so like still the raincoat. I'll suspend disbelief for this one. Also, there is this one scene in the game, and I don't know why they put this in there. I don't know what happened here, because on one hand they want me to take the story seriously and kind of what they're doing here, and then they throw a scene like this at me. It's out of context. It doesn't really spoil too much, I don't think, anyway, and it's been making the rounds online, but when I saw this, couldn't believe it.
Great. So I'm Mario and you're Princess Peach. You're right. I never gave a shit about this country. I have no ties to anything or anyone but you.
I'm so sorry, Sam. But it all worked out in the end.
How do we do it? Do we jump like Fragile?
No. The beach goes the whole way. We run. Together.
Run?
Yeah. Like Mario and Princess Peach.
But while the story is very good, exceptionally well done, the pacing is not good. And if you remember, there was that saying that you have to play the game for about 10 hours before it gets good. And I think what they are trying to say is after about 10 hours, you start getting stuff that makes delivering packages and essentially doing things outside of cutscenes in the story easier or faster. That's kind of what it sounds like to me when they are saying that, because in the beginning they try to get you going with a cutscene that lasts quite a while. Like the first hour and a half of the game, you don't pick up the controller that often. They're trying to set the stage, build the story very quickly, but then it falls into this lull for like chapters 2 and 3 and a little bit of 4, but 4 kind of picks up a bit, where you're not doing a lot in terms of the story. You're basically delivering packages, and it's this weird lull where it feels like it's inconvenient just to be inconvenient. And that is, I think, one of the biggest things that's going to put people off. It doesn't cater to people who want to have a a faster moving story and a better pace. And I think that is one of the biggest faults of this game that keeps it from being great. Like, there are parts in the game where they are moving through the story and it's very emotional at times. They're trying to, get a reaction from you, the person playing and viewing this story. And then they kick you out of that cutscene and they're like, oh, we need to go deliver this and get them on the chiral network. It's a 40-minute walk. And then we'll do another cutscene, okay? And see ya. And that was kind of it. And there were those points. And I know it's not just me. I know there are people out there who like this game that will admit there were times where you were really, really involved in the story. You were really getting at it, right? Maybe you put the controller down, you're sitting back and you're watching. You're like, this is great. This looks good. I'm having a good time watching this. And then it kicks you out. And then you look at the map for where you have to go. And I know it happened to some of you where you just go, oh. Also, there's this point later in the game that's hilarious, where, I mean, we're moving. It's hitting the fan right now, right? Characters are developing, things are happening, major events that are altering the entire story are taking place, and then I'm in the room, which you have a private room, I'm in the room, and all of a sudden, all of the characters start showing up, like the main characters, and I'm kind of looking around, and it's so funny. I was trained this way, by the way, to see this happening, and I look around like they're going to have an intervention for me, and I'm like, they're about to ask me to walk for like 30 minutes across the continent right now with all of this stuff happening. And that's what they did. Also, nothing happened in that 30 minutes. I just walked. There wasn't much to do. Okay, gotta go from here to there. Maybe they wanted me to absorb something or learn something. Occasionally they called me with a little message. That was it. Okay, something good. Visually, I think this game is the best of the generation. Yep, that's right. I said it. I think when you get out there and you're looking around at the scenery, it looks good. If you have HDR on your TV and it's real HDR, not like the HDR where they say it's HDR, but it's not. Anyway, if you have good HDR, this is one of the showcase games to do it. Like, this is it right here. It looks phenomenal. Like I said, I already talked about the character models and even their interactions with each other. There's very little clipping that takes place, so that doesn't kick you out of it. The lighting is fantastic. I was walking through different parts of this world, whether it's snowy or you're in like a tar pit. It just looks amazing. And when you do eventually run into boss battles, some of the stuff they do in those boss battles really do make you just kind of look around like, wow. And now on to what I think is the most controversial point of this game, and that is the gameplay. And you know what? There is a mixed bag here for me when it comes to this, because I can see how some people will be okay with how this game plays. Specifically, I don't necessarily think everyone's thrilled about the walking aspect, because it does feel like a waste of time sometimes where nothing's happening. But there is a really cool part of this game that I wanted to go over that I think is one of the driving factors for people to play the game outside of the story. So in the game, you do play literally as a delivery person. You're walking back and forth between areas, and you are bringing packages back and forth. Some of them mean more than others. One might be a very important medical device. The other one might be a pizza. Seriously, that's it. There might be some conditions. It cannot get wet. It can only take so much damage. Those kinds of things. Some of them, it has to be oriented a certain way, and you'll go through your inventory and fix it up and change it. And there's also an auto arrange button that I used quite frequently because micromanaging inventory is boring. Yeah, it is. So auto arrange, boom, we're off and running. Thank you for at least doing that. But you do have access to some vehicles. They will change. Sometimes you will have access to a bike that someone may have even left you or you have crafted. You might have a truck, and that does also help. I really liked when I was able to drive a bike around, and especially if a highway was built, I was like, all right, good, we're good to go. But as you deliver stuff back and forth, you will gain levels, you'll gain likes, and your character will essentially kind of progress as you get access to more and more things. Like I said, if you 5-star places or kind of create better bonds with some of these locations, you'll have items that they provide to you, whether it's tools or weapons, or I even said that tarp thing that apparently the one location could come up with, of course, was able to provide. It does give you a driving force to at least complete some of the monotonous tasks, the really kind of the boring tasks at times, because you know that there is at least something on the other side for you to kind of get. There's also stealth sections, so you may be kind of going across a field, and then all of a sudden it starts raining, there's a rainbow, and then boom, you'll have BTs pop up. That's kind of where your BB, which is the baby that's pretty much strapped to your chest, and then your little robot arm will come up. It'll start detecting the BTs around you. If you stand still, you will be able to see kind of an outline of them, sort of, and you can try to avoid them, which works, and at times you'll also come up with ways to essentially neutralize them as well. And it was really neat a couple of times when you first come across them. It was like, this is pretty cool. But then it really doesn't change much. There is a point later on where the BTs do alter slightly, and they're not really invisible anymore. They just explode, but it doesn't change much after that. It becomes an inconvenience once again, just to inconvenience you. You also have mules that pretty much try to hunt you down, not for you, but for your packages. And I will say one of the cooler things was trying to sneak into their base and retrieving cargo, because when they steal cargo from other players, they will store it in their locker. And a few times I found some that I guess was lost cargo from people. That was neat. You sneak in there, you can grab the stuff, you can leave. You can do that quite a bit and actually gain favor with different locations. And while they are kind of annoying because I don't think they ever stop coming, you can come up with ideas to shoot them with like the bola gun that wraps them up. So it's not all running necessarily from them. You can fight back, but they just seem to keep respawning and coming after you. So you either have to get in there, grab the stuff, neutralize a few, and then get out of there, or you get captured. Okay, the best part of the game, I think, when it comes to the gameplay, is the multiplayer. This is really, really fun. It's a cool idea. I really like what they did here. Essentially, as you start to connect the network between different locations, other people's stuff, other people actually playing the game that are connected to the internet and using, I guess, I don't think you need PlayStation Plus, but as long as you're connected to the internet, some of the stuff that you lay down, whether it's ladders or ropes, or even you work to build roads together, will appear in your game and other people's games. So if you say, put a ladder down so you can climb up a cliff, it also has a chance to show up in someone else's world, and then they'll give you likes. You get a little thing here that says you're getting likes. It's a pretty neat idea. I think it's fun, and there are some cool things that can take place. For example, you might be out there and you need to recharge your little robot legs, and oh look, there's a generator that somebody put down. I'm going to use it, and then I'll drop some likes to them. And then as I work to collect resources to build a road, other people will also dump resources into it, and you and people around you playing their own version of the game can actually work to build a road from one side to the other. It is a really neat idea. And I think that sense of gathering and kind of building with the community is a driving force for some people to play this game. Like, as far as the gameplay goes, I think it's the weakest link of this game by far. However, that multiplayer aspect where you are building roads together, for example, or bridges even, is a really neat thing, because you have to bring a lot of resources together that you find pretty much out in the fields, for example. And as you bring them together, you will see the numbers go up, and then you'll have a large section of a highway built. And when that highway starts to get completely built throughout the continent, it becomes much easier to traverse it, and there is a sense of accomplishment there. Okay, I said gameplay is a mixed bag, and that's because I think this gameplay was also designed to pad out the game. I don't think the game had to be 39 hours. I played through it, and I said, you know what? This did not need to be that long, because I didn't even do a ton of side stuff in the game. I didn't really do any standard orders. I mostly was just going through the game quicker, I would say. There were times where I took a few orders here and there. I was like, oh, I'll go do this, or I'll see what's over here, you know, things like that. But I wasn't trying to 5-star any place. I was like, all right, I'm gonna get through this game, and that way we can kind of look back on it and reflect. And the story was pulling me forward to where I was like, I don't feel like doing standard orders. I want to see what's next in line here for Sam, the main character, and what's going to happen with all this stuff going on, because there are twists and everything in the game that when it hits you with one, I don't feel like walking across the continent to go deliver something. I want to see what happens next. So I do think when I look at this game and I look at the amount of cutscenes, just over 9 hours of cutscenes, I think they looked at that themselves and said, we have to come up with at least 20 hours of gameplay minimum. And I think they realized that they needed the gameplay to be padded out, because otherwise, if you weren't walking everywhere for half an hour at a time, right, the game would probably be less the gameplay than the cutscenes. This could have been a 20-hour game, I feel like, and I think it would have helped the game, to be honest. If it was less time spent walking back and forth, I think the game would feel much more brisk. I think it would feel like you accomplished a lot more, just because it would have been done in a smaller window, and I think the pacing would have been much, much better. That, I think, is this game's biggest weakness, is it feels padded and longer than it should be. And I know one of the arguments is it's intended to be. I think we have to get to a point where not everything that Kojima does is a metaphor, right? I don't think that's the case. I think sometimes you just have to look at it straight up and say, you know what? This feels padded out. I don't need to look for another reason why this feels padded out. It's just padded out. The way I see it is great games are able to grab the player in the first hour or two to the point where they're like, I got to keep playing this game. This is it right here. This is so much fun. I have to play this game. Death Stranding works in reverse. The first half of the game, not as good as the back half of the game. Like at all. It's like night and day different, right? There are some times in the back half, like I pointed out, but for the most part, for some reason, I don't know what the deal was. They made it so that the first half of the game will just lose people. Like, it's so weird to me, and that's just not something a great game would be doing. And I just don't believe that the gameplay itself is good enough to hold this game up. If the story isn't as good, I don't think this game is even going to get another look from a lot of people. And if Kojima didn't do it, let's say this game had an average story and the same gameplay and it was done by EA. Would people want to play it this badly or really enjoy it so much? Okay, on to a good thing. The soundtrack, the sound design, where they place these songs is great. That is something that I really like to see. There were points where I was, like I said, I was annoyed, I'm walking through, and then you kind of get over like a mountaintop and you look down and you see your destination from a distance. Okay, you still have like another couple minutes to walk. But all of a sudden, they start playing a song. Low roar. Everyone's on, the song will play. And it does feel like you've made progress. I think that was a great strategy to do that because otherwise you would see it and you'd be like, okay, here we go. Or I'm going to walk down this mountaintop that I've spent the last 15 minutes scaling. There is that sense of kind of everything gets cut off because then they cut sound to all of the environment and everything around you. Otherwise, you hear water flowing and grass that's under your feet. They cut sound to that, and they bring up the music, and it's very, very cool. It's a fun effect. It really is. It's neat. I like it, and it does kind of give you this sense of accomplishment when you're kind of going down the mountaintop, and you're like, oh, I'm almost out of battery or stamina, but I made it, right? And then you kind of roll in, and it stops playing. But there's like those few minutes afterwards when you're walking up to it that it feels good. And the last bad thing. Boss battles. The boss battles are not good. I don't know why they are so bad because they look amazing. Like you're playing them and you're like, wow, this is going to be insane. Like there's got to be some clever trick to defeat this boss. I don't even want to describe them because when they hit you with them, you're like, wow, okay, what am I supposed to do here? It's the same thing every time. I don't even really want to describe what weapons you're using because that plays into the plot. Although I think a lot of people have talked about it. Basically, you have grenades and you have guns as well in the game, and they'll deal with the BTs or different enemies that you run into. We'll say big bosses. It's all the same. You just shoot them, you throw grenades at them, you might have a rocket launcher, and that's it. Like, there's no, like, clever parts of the boss battles or any of that. Nope, you shoot them, and then eventually their health bar goes down. And then that's kind of it. I just think that Kojima went for all show with these boss battles. There wasn't a lot of thought to substance for it. One of the cool things, though, is that the different porters will pop up out of the ground and throw stuff to you, whether it's like a healing item or ammo or a gun or more grenades. That's kind of neat. Oh, and as for Higgs, what a bad character. If you play through this game, I don't know. Higgs was just there. Like, he was just in the way half the time. Like, I know there's not a ton of fourth wall breaking in this game. There is some, but like every time he showed up after the first like 2 or 3, he just felt like a nuisance. Like he didn't even feel that threatening half the time. And I was waiting for at some point Kojima to pull like the fourth wall break and have Sam kind of look at the camera and just be like, this guy, right? He doesn't even go out like a good bad guy. Seriously, he kind of goes out like a wimp, to be honest. When I look back at Death Stranding, I see a game that could have been an amazing 15 to 20 hour experience, but when the cutscenes total over 9 hours, it looks like the gameplay had to be stretched to meet a quota almost. This results in poor pacing throughout, with the front end of the game being so unbearable, it will just outright put some people off. In fact, it already has. We've seen it. I think that's why there are some low scores for this game. If you had to take the game, split it in half, score the front half, and then the back half, I think the back half is like one of the best games of like the generation. But the front half is also one of the worst games of the generation, and I think that explains kind of why this game is so polarizing and why there are so many different experiences with it. It really comes down to how well you can tolerate the beginning of this game, and that's why I look at this and I say, you know what, Death Stranding could have been great. You know what, no, Death Stranding could have been the game of this generation, but it's not, and that's unfortunate. But let me know what you guys think about Death Stranding down below. I'm very curious of like your overall thoughts on this game. If you agree with anything I said or disagree, let me know, guys, down below. Thank you so much for watching. Make sure you like the video on the way out if you enjoyed it, dislike it if not, and I'll see you next time.